He's raising his hand saying go or something.
Well, thank you for joining us today. I'm Chris Steinbach, Deputy Director at Muscatine Center for Social Action, which provides housing for those in need in Muscatine County, and on Saturday, February 1st, will assume oversight of Muscatine's domestic violence shelter. Joining me today are Maggie Curry, Executive Director at MCSA, and Rachel Riley-Smock, who will serve as Director of the Domestic Violence Shelter. Rachel is joining MCSA after a 17-year career with Family Resources of Davenport, which announced plans in October to close Muscatine's domestic violence shelter because of changes in how the State Attorney General's office administers money from its Crime Victims Assistance Fund. How Muscatine responded to the potential loss of its domestic violence shelter is a good story, one we will discuss today, along with what will happen in the future with the new partnership between MCSA and the domestic violence shelter. First, Rachel, as you understand it, please explain the changes by the Attorney General that led up to this new partnership between MCSA and the domestic violence shelter.
Right. It was July of 2012. We were told by the Attorney General's office and the coalitions that they were looking at transitioning the state of Iowa into regions, and that they were going to have to, unfortunately, due to federal and state cutbacks, be cutting back on the ability to fund all the programs as they were across the state of Iowa. And one of the things they talked about is that to have a shelter going 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, costs a lot of money. And so were looking at this new plan of rapid rehousing and some other ways that they could help victims of domestic violence. And so the thought was to have in our regions, and there are 6 regions in the state of Iowa, the eventual plan was to have only one shelter per region, and one comprehensive domestic violence program and one comprehensive sexual assault program. In our region, the directors worked well together and came up with a different plan, but then obviously with further cuts in that, Family Resources, who operates domestic violence shelter in both Davenport and Muscatine, decided due to funding issues that it just could not sustain both shelters, and so decided and obviously made the announcement in October to the community, obviously a few weeks before that to the staff, about the plan to close the Muscatine shelter as of December 31st, 2013.
Maggie, how did MCSA get involved, and when did it get involved?
We went to that first meeting and kind of just sat back and gathered information. And then we had a lot of people asking questions, that if we would take it over and things. Went to our board of directors and we had a special meeting called and discussed it, and we really felt that there definitely was the need for the shelter. We did not want to see it go away. We wanted to keep it in the community because it had been a community shelter started years ago for the fundraising and things. The community is the one that really started it. And so we felt it was really necessary to keep it going and have the services available. And so our board of directors, we made some arrangements, and we decided to go ahead and take it over. We felt it was a good fit for MCSA. And so there's some paperwork. We weren't able to complete it by December 31st, so Family Resources was kind enough to give us an extra month to get our paperwork in a row, in order and things, and just to have everything all ready to go. And I feel very comfortable today, January 31st, we are ready to go. So February 1 will be MCSA domestic violence shelter.
And so you say the meeting, this was the meeting that Family Resources held
back in October, yes,
to announce this.
Right.
Which you had been working on, apparently, Rachel, at that point with other employees of Family Resources for quite some time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Maggie, you talked a little bit about the meetings and stuff. Maybe the two of you could talk some about, a lot has happened since that meeting in October.
It has.
I mean, there have been all kinds of meetings. There's been fundraising efforts and a lot of things. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of those things.
Well, Susan Corey definitely took the lead at that actual meeting on October, I think it was 25th, and said you know, we absolutely believe that Muscatine can sustain and wants to sustain the domestic violence shelter, because of course I know that when I started back in 1997 is when we actually had the shelter campaign, and the reason that they had the shelter campaign and the community stepped up is because we had a 1.5 bedroom apartment behind Trinity Episcopal Church, which wasn't staffed 24 hours a day. And so many people we were having to send to the Davenport, the Iowa City, the Burlington shelter. And of course, that was Muscatine residents and their children having to relocate and leave their schools, leave their hometown. So that's why the community said, absolutely, we need to have a domestic violence shelter that's staffed 24 hours a day. So that's why the campaign started in 1997. And then we raised the money, the Shelter Campaign Committee, which is ironic because many of those same people, really all the same people that were part of that in 1997 have been a part of this campaign in the last few months. And so obviously we're in the process of raising the money to be able to sustain the shelter. We're very, very delighted. I mean, I know myself, I'm delighted that MCSA and the board and the staff have been so gracious and kind and taking this on, because you know, it's obviously very dear to my heart, and many of the staff that I had at the shelter, this has been a journey for us for many, many years, and so we're just so excited that this vital program is going to be able to stay open.
You prevented a good segue to the next question I wanted to ask, which is specifically who some of the people are that have been involved. But before we get to that, real quick, maybe you could talk a little bit about the shelter itself and what sets it apart from the one-bedroom apartment that you started out with back in the mid-90s.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the building itself and why it's important to keep that.
Right. It's a 4-bedroom house, and it's truly a home. I've been to many shelters, you know, across the states and in other states, and even in Europe, you know, in England, my home place, and that. But it's really a home. It's not institutional feeling. It's very warm, and it can house up to 20 women and children per night. We have a handicap accessible bathroom. We have a communal living and dining room and kitchen. And it just really is fantastic to have someone there 24 hours a day, a staff member, that if someone's upset in the middle of the night who's residing there and just wants to talk to someone, they can do. That's also, you know, where people feel safe. We have a security system. We have, if something were to go awry, which, you know, is in 17 years, I think we've had 2 incidences where someone's shown up at the door and the police are there in 2 minutes. So it's the silliest of places for anyone to show up. Of course, it's a confidential location for the security and safety of the clients and staff and that. But it's we're proud of it. The whole house is furnished by donations from the community. We have beautiful quilts from, you know, the melon patches, from senior resources, all the different quilters donate. So all of our clients and their children can, when they leave, they take a quilt with them. You know, it just very much has been a community effort to start it, to operate it, and now to keep it open.
Maggie, all of that sounds very similar to what I know about MCSA, but it's not exactly the same thing. So in what ways are they kind of comparable, and in what specifically is different?
Well, one thing I would like to say is that Rachel mentioned the quilters and things. Everybody in the community has joined in with whatever their niche is. There's a vital need for the funding, naturally. There's always a need for the monies. And so we continue that fundraising. And then also with the quilters and people that are donating the food and things like that, everybody has a piece into it. So it's their shelter. And it's really important that people know that every little bit adds up, and that we appreciate everything that we do receive for the shelter and for the homeless shelter also. And I think it's been a pleasure working and going through this transition with Family Resources. They've been very, very helpful. And then with the staff, I've known Rachel for years. I've been at the shelter for 18 years. And Judy started out at our shelter years ago. And so we've known each other. We know the services we have to offer. And theirs is more the confidentiality, which ours is confidential too. but it's our folks, sometimes they go out and say, I'm living at the shelter, you know, they're more a little open with it and things. But at the domestic abuse shelter, that is definitely very, very confidential and cannot be disclosed, and it's up to the ladies too to keep themselves safe, and then the people that are also living there, the other people, to keep them safe, and then along with the staff too. You have to watch out for your staff too, they're very vital.
You both mentioned Susan Corey, who heads up the Muscatine County Cares organization and is, of course, a former executive director of the YMCA here, and I think the YWCA before that. What has been some of her role in all of this, and then who are the other people that have joined her in helping the transition from Family Resources to MCSA for the domestic violence shelter?
Well, Susan, she was the spokesperson that night in October. It was amazing. I really admired the way she got up and talked to the audience about the need, keeping the shelter and stuff. We just couldn't let it go away. And she's very passionate, and you can tell her heart's right there. And so from her previous experiences and things, it was just very important to her. So she was, she got people together. She made phone calls and stuff. Dick Stanley's working with us, and Jim Stein, Mike Johansson, John Becky, Jim Trozen's with MWA, they're working with us, and Susan, Holly Opelt is doing some work. Wilma is volunteering, doing thank you letters. So as volunteers, they're all volunteers, and it's really great. There's a lot of work to it. It's like, I had said at one meeting, it's like taking over a business for MCSA. We're acquiring 7 more employees, and we're acquiring a house and things, other billings and budgets and things like that. So it's been a good transition, and I think we're ready to go.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong about this, because I could be wrong. I have been wrong once.
I could have been wrong too.
Twice. I think it's interesting, though. It shows the level of commitment that the staff has, and I think a lot of the volunteers as well. Rachel, you're technically not yet on MCSA's payroll.
No, tomorrow.
Everything that you've been doing since how long? You've
January
basically
3rd.
Volunteered.
Yeah.
And the same goes with others that have been involved in this.
Right.
It's been all volunteer.
Right, right. And one of the things, too, that I think is important for everyone to know about Susan is that she is one of our founding forefront of starting the first shelter in the state of Iowa. So she's seen in the domestic violence movement as one of the founders of the movement in Iowa, too. So she has a long history and obviously the passion. So that's been a nice sort of, piece in with that as well.
Okay, so as of February 1st, Saturday, what will happen? Will the domestic violence shelter, it's not going to, let's make it real clear to people, it's not going to be moving to MCSA.
No, same location.
So what will happen?
Well, we obviously are being absorbed and under the umbrella agency of MCSA. It will be business as usual. The only difference is that, Family Resources still has the comprehensive domestic violence and sexual assault services for the 5 counties, which includes Muscatine and Louisa County as well. But we will still continue to obviously shelter women and children at the shelter. And all the staff from that were with Family Resources with the shelter have agreed to come along, so that's been great because I think I added it up together between all of us. It's close to like 90 years of service that we've done at Family Resources. So with all that experience and that, it's been great that they're all going to come along.
So if unfortunately you are a battered woman in Muscatine and you decide you've had enough and you want to reach out for help, do you still call the same phone number you've always called? What number do you call? Will you be calling Family Resources, or will you be calling the shelter here?
Well,
how will all of that work?
We will still have our crisis line, which we will give to like the local law enforcement for people who need to be sheltered in Muscatine. But then Family Resources has a crisis line that rings out of goes into the Davenport shelter. But yeah, we will still have our local, obviously the business line, which would be through MCSA 264-3278, which is where my office will be. And then we also still have the crisis line number of 263-8080, because there will still be obviously a staff member there 24 hours a day to answer those phones.
Let's repeat that number just to make sure people got it, and so that they get it in the production room, and maybe you can put it on the screen too. What was the number to call?
In Muscatine, 263-8080.
Okay.
How I always tell people, the little mind trick is it's when disco started, 1980. 80, I think. So, yeah.
So the partnership between MCSA and the domestic violence shelter, the DV shelter becoming a program in essence of MCSA, how long is that expected to last? Will that be forever? Do you know the answer to that? I mean, what do you tell people when they ask you that?
We're hoping forever.
There's not really a set time or anything. It's just, we'll, as a business ourselves, we'll observe it as we go month to month, and just take a look at finances and make sure everything's okay. That's why the funding's so important, to keep that coming in. But no, we plan on doing however long it goes, and I don't really see a set time for disconnection. We're looking at a 2-year period right now to just kind of revisit that. And I mean, I know that one of my main emphases will be to seek funding that will be able to keep us going, because obviously we're very grateful to the community, but this is a one-time ask, Right.
And that we want to be able to find that state, local, federal funding to be able to keep the shelter going, along with some community support as well.
So I'm assuming that you're still asking for money. If someone wanted to help, how would they do that?
Well, we have the domestic violence shelter website that is for the campaign.
on the screen.
Which is now currently on the screen, which is www.muscatineabuseshelter.org. They can also call myself at MCSA starting Monday at 264-3278 and ask for me. And yes, like Maggie said before, time that people could give, or items or anything. I mean, we're open to and would be delighted with anybody wanting to help. But then also too, there is the ability on that website to make a monetary donation as well to the shelter campaign.
That's through a PayPal account.
It's through a PayPal account, yes.
Our address is MCSA 312 Iowa Avenue. We are accepting checks every day. Our monetary donations come in our mail every day. So we're always, just address it, abuse shelter, and we will get it to the right account.
Okay. And the same would go with in-kind donations. If someone had
Absolutely.
something they wanted to give to the,
Right.
well, for that matter, for either shelter,
Right.
but for today's purposes,
Right.
the domestic violence shelter, they would call you at MCSA and make an arrangement
Yes.
to bring those items and
Right.
deliver them. Okay.
And that's one of the things whenever I have interviewed staff, everyone has to have a van or an SUV so that we can go pick up donations. So if people want to call me, we're glad to go and pick things up too, which is sometimes easier for people, so that we can then just take it directly to the shelter.
And while we're talking about fundraising efforts, I think when it comes to the domestic violence shelter, probably the big question that many of your supporters may be wondering about, if they don't already know, the New Beginnings fundraiser that you do annually. Do you know at this point what will happen with that? And will it happen this year, or?
The plan is that we will have it this year. We're still looking at dates. It will probably be pushed out. We've typically had it in April. It probably, if we're able to get a date down, sometime in early May, we're thinking, mid-May. And the members of the New Beginnings Committee, several of them have graciously agreed to be a part of it again. So we're excited about it, because obviously it always has been a fantastic evening, and the community has been so supportive. The New Beginnings, of course, it's important to remember that it was started by a group of volunteers. Pat Johnson and Terry Lucht and Michelle Hutton started this way back in 2001, and it was a fundraiser specifically for the women and children at the domestic violence shelter. So yes, we're going to sustain and keep that campaign going and that fundraising evening. So we certainly are working on nailing a date down and getting everything going. But yes, absolutely. We thought, we tossed around the idea of, taking a year off because of the shelter campaign and that. But on the other hand, I think that to keep the momentum going, and it's a lovely evening as well. I know that many of the people that have come every year and supported it and have asked me and asked, please keep it going because we do want to come and have that evening again.
That support's there.
Mm-hmm.
So Monday morning, you're going to go to work at MCSA.
Yes.
I'll be bumping into you next to the coffee maker and those kinds of things.
Right.
Just real quick, I should know the answer to this and I don't, and maybe you can't tell me. Are there residents at the DV shelter right now?
There are, yes. And so obviously they will remain there. Nothing is going to change for them. They will then, what is happening is that the files are being closed out as from Family Resources and through their filing system, and then we will open up new files under MCSA for those same clients.
So if you're a client, you really will see no noticeable change.
No, other than, rather than being under the umbrella of Family Resources, it's now under the umbrella of MCSA.
Okay. Well,
I think that's the big thing, that you're not really going to see any changes. Everybody's going to be sleeping through the night, and the next day it's going to be MCSA, responsible for it. So it's just just a change overnight.
I think what I've heard a lot of people say through this whole process is that certainly the campaign in 1997. How it was set up was the Muscatine Welfare Association owns the building, which it still does. It owns the actual building of the shelter. During the campaign in 1997, the money was funneled through the Muscatine Health Association, and then Family Resources was going to administer the programming. So through this processing, it's been very clear and very important that people are excited because it's always been a Muscatine owned and ran program, and it's going to remain so. And that's important, that the services are given by people that live and work here locally in Muscatine.
Well, as we begin to maybe wrap this up, just to summarize things, if someone wants to help or they want to make a donation, the ways that they can do that is they can do it through a PayPal account online on a website where we'll show the address on the screen where they can see it. They could send a check to MCSA, and they should probably mark on the memo line of the check that it's for the domestic violence shelter, and the address for MCSA is 312 Iowa Avenue in Muscatine. Right. Or they could come in person and do those things as well.
Right. Call the office. I mean, they can certainly call 264-3278 and ask for me.
Okay.
And, we'd be glad to hear what they're willing to help us with.
So if someone missed the first part of this and they're just kind of coming in on the end of the show, and you wanted them to know one thing about the transition from Family Resources to MCSA for the DV shelter, and I'll ask this question of both of you, what would the one thing be that you would want people to know, or anything that I've maybe forgotten to ask you today?
I could start. I know that obviously not originally being from Muscatine, but now it's been my home for over 17 years, have just been overwhelmed with the support and the openness and kindness, again, from MCSA, the board, the staff, this committee, Susan and Mr. Dick Stanley and Jim Stein, John Becky. I mean, how this all happened has just been tremendous. And also, I want to say to the staff at the shelter, it's been a difficult road in many, it's been very hard for all of us in a sense that, many of us have given many years, and so we were worried that the shelter was going to shut down and people were going to lose their jobs. So that has been obviously fantastic that the community stepped up and realizes that, the statistic that I gave in the United Way grant, I mean, we turned away 201 people last year because we were full at those certain times when people were trying to get in. And then we also turned away 44 people because they didn't fulfill the assessment requirements. So that's a lot of people. So there's that in itself, as well as the 86 people that we sheltered, and the many thousands of nights that we gave.
Unfortunately, there's clearly a need for
absolutely. So that, to me, is the thing that I'm so grateful for, that the community and all of these different people and entities have stepped forward and said, yes, we will do this. This is part of what we think is important in Muscatine. So I'm thankful for that.
Maggie, anything you'd like to add to that, or?
It's the right thing to do. There is a need. We want to be sure people, ladies and children, are safe and secure, and that they feel that they can go, they have a place to go that is safe, and that they know that somebody's there to help them out, that'll reach out to them. And when they come out of a violent situation, you know, they're just so fragile, they're wounded, and it's really tough. And to know, it's got to be hard to walk in that door, I'm sure, and to know that somebody is there to help them out is just, I think it's great. And if we didn't have that, I don't know what we would do. It'd be very difficult.
I guess if I were to add one thing to that, it was very apparent from early in that meeting in October. Early, from the time the meeting started, there was a big crowd at that meeting.
Yes.
And it was very apparent that the community felt pretty strongly that
Right.
this needed to happen somehow.
Yes.
And between the three of us, I would have no idea how many meetings we've sat in on since then. It's been a lot.
We've gotten to know each other very well.
Yes,
Yeah, clearly the community is behind what's going on.
definitely.
Absolutely.
Well, I
That's
don't.
what need to be done in the meetings and things, you know, to talk these things out, because you know, you change utilities over and you're changing computers, you're changing phones. So it is just like moving, you know, transitioning to another business, whatever. But yeah, there's a lot to it, and we're looking forward to it and feel
think it's-
comfortable, we're ready to go.
I think, as Maggie said, you know, even before all of this, we had always all worked very well together. I mean, we all know that the community collaborates incredibly, the agencies together. So I think that was obviously a big key. I know many of the people, even on that committee, said, well, it just seemed so obvious where where it should go. It just seemed, you know, and so it all fell into place beautifully, really. And so I'm just excited.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you for taking some time today
Chris.
to discuss
Thank you,
this,
Chris.
and thank everybody else for taking some time to watch and learn more about what's going on at MCSA and the Domestic Violence Shelter. Thank you very much.